We are back. We have made it through the unholy slog of Swamp Boy versus Action Man, of French Woman versus Jersey, of Nama Yunus versus Amanda Hibbis. We are finally done with watching losers fight each other for our entertainment in front of nobody at empty arenas. Oh, it feels good to actually have real fights in front of us. And what a real fight we have in the main event. We have Jamahal Hill versus Alex Pereira, one of the most entertaining fighters in the UFC, arguably of all time, on the Mount Rushmore of combat sports athletes throughout all of modern combat sports, versus Jamahal Hill, who has pretty good boxing and takedown defense. So let's actually get into this main event. We'll run through the athletes' records and then we'll go through their attributes and see how they match up against each other, and then give a prediction at the end of the video. So first off, let's run through their stats. We have Jamahal Hill. He is 12-1-0. He's 32, 6'4", 79-inch reach. And Alex Pereira is 9-2, so actually pretty similar records. He's 36, so 2 years older than Jamahal, 6'4", and according to Tapology, an 80-inch reach. So 1 inch higher in reach and 2 years older than Jamahal Hill. They say that their height is the same. Actually, I'm kind of curious. 194 centimeters for Alex, 193 centimeters for Hill. So he is technically a centimeter shorter, which is what I thought, because if we look at this image, it does look like Pereira is a bit bigger than Jamahal Hill is, just in terms of the height of his head. I thought this stare down was going to be more intense than it was. Jamahal Hill brought some funny energy into this stare down in this pre-fight press conference. So let's run through the record. I just spent the afternoon watching through Jamahal Hill's fights. So he gets into the UFC in 2019 off of the Contender Series against Alexander Popik. He elbowed him from mount in round 2. I think I remember watching highlights of that, but I didn't go back and rewatch it. Then he decisions Darko Stosic. This was a fight that is no contest, but Jamahal Hill was winning it. I think it got overturned for like a banned substance. Anyway, he fights Ovince St. Preux, TKOs him in round 2. That was a pretty good performance from Jamahal Hill. He was kind of just cruising, and Ovince St. Preux just shut down. And then we saw Jamahal Hill just like throw on a pretty brutal and consistent onslaught in the latter parts of round 2, TKOing him ultimately. Then he fights Paul Craig. That was a weird one. He was like so full of himself. I remember watching in the embedded, Paul Craig's like, "Oh, your breath smells like shit." And then Jamahal Hill's like, "Well, my hands are like shit too." It is just so dumb. And anyway, that was a pretty funny fight. Paul Craig pulls guard on Jamahal Hill. He has a really tight overhook on Hill's right arm, and then he like tries to triangle him. He flips him over, attempting to do an armbar. Jamahal Hill escapes it, and then instead of standing up, he goes back into Paul Craig's guard and essentially gets his arm hyperextended, his elbow completely busted, and then it's counted as a TKO because it's arm injury and strikes from guard, just because the referee didn't catch the submission quick enough. And then you have Jimmy Crute, where he just kind of decimates him. Jimmy Crute just like runs in blindly, blitzing him down, and Jamahal Hill just catches him with a step away right hook, knocking him to the ground. And then Crute gets up again, does the exact same thing, gets knocked down again. It's the exact same strike. Then he fights Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker's doing a whole bunch of crazy shit, and Jamahal Hill just kind of keeps stalking him, keeps applying heavy pressure, and then lands a really nice overhand right as Johnny Walker's leaning into the strike by throwing a ill-advised punch, basically. And he kind of just runs into Jamahal Hill's right hand, because Johnny Walker's leaning into the punch, his head is basically doubling the force of Jamahal Hill's punch, and it cranks his neck back. That's where you get that comical kind of like compression and then spring back as Johnny Walker springs back from the power of the punch and then collapses against the cage. And then Jamahal Hill, again with his right hand, just dives in, kind of reminiscent of Dustin Poirier. I forget who he was ground and pounding, but Jamahal Hill just like slides that right hand right over the chin of Johnny Walker. He was already out cold, but still a pretty cool final shot. Then he fights Thiago Santos. That was a pretty sweet fight, actually. One of the better fights in the Apex. So that fight started out, I would say Jamahal Hill won the first couple of rounds. Round 3, Thiago Santos really put a lot of effort into grappling Jamahal Hill, and to pretty good success. I don't know who won round 3 on the judges' scorecards, but I'd say that was Thiago Santos' best round. In rounds 1 and 2, they were getting into a sloppy brawl. Thiago Santos' corner even told him, "Why are you treating this like a bar fight? Keep it professional, keep it professional." Because of that, he comes out in round 3 and grapples Jamahal Hill. So this kind of gets you to the spot where you realize that Jamahal Hill is a sloppy fighter. He likes to fight sloppy. That's what he enjoys. He gets into, as Thiago Santos' corner said, bar fights. He marches his opponent down. He loves to pin them up against the cage and then just start unloading his punches on them. That's what he did against Ovince St. Preux. That's what he was doing against Johnny Walker. It just didn't get there because he landed a beautiful punch on him. That's what he did against Thiago Santos, and that's what he also does against Glover Teixeira in his next fight. So he was just beating Thiago Santos up. He was beating him up for the first 2 rounds. It was pretty close. It was back and forth. Thiago Santos was landing good strikes. This is also where you learn that Jamahal Hill has a very good chin, because he was eating punches that Thiago Santos was landing on him, that he was countering him with. So Jamahal Hill would like throw an overhand right, Thiago would slip it, throw his own right, it would crack Jamahal Hill on the side of the head. That's how round 2 ended in that fight. But then in round 4, Thiago Santos tries to go for takedowns again. Jamahal Hill just stuffs them. He starts marching him down. Thiago Santos tries to run away, which is always ill-advised. And Hill lands a pretty nice left hook to Thiago Santos' face. And then from there, Santos just kind of wilts. I think he was exhausted. A lot of Hill's wins come from him simply outworking his opponents. Ovince St. Preux, he outworked. Jimmy Crute and Johnny Walker, he just landed great shots on them. And Thiago Santos and Glover Teixeira, he outworked them too. He just kind of ground them down. Glover Teixeira was an interesting one. Teixeira was able to land takedowns on Jamahal Hill, and the thought process going into this fight was that if Teixeira was able to get takedowns on Hill, then Teixeira would win the fight, and if Hill could defend the takedowns, then Hill would win the fight. But Hill surprised a lot of people by showing off his defensive grappling, something that he had clearly been working on, that he had displayed in the Thiago Santos fight. But I think that his ability to get up was shown in this Glover Teixeira fight, where Glover Teixeira was able to get him down, able to get in mount on Jamahal Hill, and Jamahal Hill was able to work his way out of really bad positions against a guy who's super high level on the ground in Glover Teixeira. So that was impressive. We can also look at specific techniques that Jamahal Hill used to great effect against Glover Teixeira, where he would throw head kicks against Glover. That was great that he did. He was also just landing a lot of punches on Glover Teixeira, which again kind of goes back to his output and his heavy pressure that he applies on guys and outworking his opponents. So he was essentially able to outwork Glover Teixeira, landing more punches on him, hurting him. He landed elbows because he had Glover Teixeira hurt on occasion, to the point where Glover would fall back onto his back, and then Jamahal Hill would follow him down to the ground and ground and pound him. If Alex Pereira had better jiu-jitsu, this would be something that would concern me about Jamahal Hill, where he's willing to follow guys that are really good on the ground back into their guard, but I don't think that this is going to really be an issue in this fight against Pereira. And in the Glover Teixeira fight, he did show a susceptibility to getting countered by his opponents, which, because of all of that heavy pressure, because of all of that output, he does sacrifice some defense because he is not very shot selective. And when he has his opponents press up against the cage, he just starts throwing. And he got hit by, kind of foreshadowing, he got hit by some big left hooks from Glover Teixeira. Kind of the same against Thiago Santos. He got hit by big shots against Thiago Santos there too. He just has a good chin. Even though his chin is good, he does wear damage. He had his face welted up in the Glover Teixeira fight. He also had his face welted up against Thiago Santos. I would be shocked if his face is not welted when he is done with the Alex Pereira fight, win or lose. We can talk about some more specifics of Jamahal Hill's game and how that's going to interact with Alex Pereira's game, but first let's do a quick rundown over Alex Pereira. So Pereira had kind of an infamous knockout over Thomas Powell where he knocked him out with his left hook in round 1, and I believe Thomas Powell was unconscious for like 4 to 8 minutes. I'm not sure how much, but anyway, he gets into the UFC off of that. He fights Andreas Michailidis and knocks him out in round 2. That was actually a really interesting fight. I would encourage you guys to go back and rewatch it. I just love the way that Alex Pereira looked in the first round of that fight, kind of like he was displeased by the level of striking Andreas was bringing into the octagon. He just looked like a cat stalking his prey in that round. Anyway, Andreas does get him to the ground. He clinches with him and gets him to the ground in round 1. He survives it. He actually welts up Andreas' face just with clinch strikes in that first round. And then the second round comes out and he does a beautiful switch flying knee, one of the best switch flying knees you're ever going to see. Then he fights Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva, I don't know if he left a piece of himself against Alex Pereira, but I don't think he's ever been the same since. He survives. Alex wins that by decision. Bruno did hurt Alex in that fight. He did grapple Alex too, but still Alex gets through. Then he fights Sean Strickland, knocks him out in round 1 with a left hook. Sean Strickland's tough as nails. He gets up from the left hook. Alex puts him down with 2 consecutive right straights. Those right straights are not talked enough about, in my opinion. Those are beautiful strikes, and they were awesome to see. Kind of just like a sniper gunning down an innocent Palestinian child. Then we have him fighting Israel Adesanya, one of my favorite fights ever, just because of the storyline of not only going into that fight, but the self-contained storyline within the fight where Alex Pereira almost gets knocked out at the end of round 1. Then he comes back, wins round 2. Then Izzy wrestles him in round 3. Then in round 4, they're both tired, but Alex starts pulling ahead a little bit. And then in round 5, he's just rolling downhill on Adesanya until Mark Goddard has to step in and stop the fight. Then he rematches Israel Adesanya in his last fight at middleweight. This is a fight that is a great setup for what needs to be a final chapter, in my opinion. I'm not going to be satisfied in this particular storyline until there is a trilogy match. But essentially, Israel Adesanya comes out. You can tell he is a little bit desperate. He is getting leg kicked. He is getting body punched. He looks hurt. I thought Alex Pereira won round 1. Apparently, all 3 of the judges gave it to Adesanya. But then round 2 comes about. Adesanya is really hurt. Alex Pereira starts pinning him up against the cage, unloading on him. And then Adesanya lands a beautiful overhand right, left hook combination. Alex goes down, and then you have another punch, and then you have the famous bow and arrow celebration from Izzy. Ironic, because Alex never uses the bow and arrow to actually celebrate his wins. He just uses that to, pay tribute to his ancestors when he walks out. But then he moves up to light heavyweight. No harm, no foul. He fights Jan Blachowicz. That was a very interesting fight. So Jan Blachowicz takes him down in the first round. Alex stays composed, loses that round. Round 2, he starts coming back. Clear win for Alex in round 2. And then in round 3, it's a very close round where it's back and forth on the feet. And then Blachowicz gets Alex down for the last minute and a half, but literally just lays in his guard. And ultimately, the judges reward that fight to Alex for winning round 2 and 3. Then he fights Yuri Prochazka. That is a fight that's emblazoned into a lot of people's memories. So he comes out. Yuri is doing his usual antics where he's like leaping around on the feet. Alex lands like 3 leg kicks, and the third one takes Yuri off of his feet. And then from then on, every leg kick that Alex is landing has a visible impact on Yuri. Like, you can see him wincing. You can see his footwork suffering every time he's getting hit by those leg kicks. So, of course, after getting kicked off of his feet, Yuri goes in for takedowns and essentially controls Alex on the ground. He lands like 2 good elbows in ground and pound, but by the end of the round, Alex has worked his way back up to his feet, and the round ends while they are standing looking at each other. Then round 2 starts. Yuri has some good moments. Alex has some good moments. They're trading leg kicks. Yuri throws a really cool little like looping jab to an overhand right combination, which catches Alex pretty cleanly. Keep that overhand right in the back of your mind when we go into the actual breakdown of this fight. And then Alex retreats as Yuri's following him up. And then Yuri throws another overhand right. This time Alex pulls away from it, lands a right hook on Yuri's neck, cranking his neck, knocking him directly into Alex's left hook, which crumples him. Yuri has a crazy chin and recoverability. He gets up, goes for a takedown. Then Alex lands 5 hammer fists and 7 elbows, and I believe it's like the 5th elbow that just causes Yuri to go limp. Yuri goes limp, falls backwards. Mark Goddard steps in, stops it. Perfect stoppage, and Alex Pereira is now the light heavyweight champion and a 2-division champion in the UFC. So both of these guys have very cool careers. They're both very cool fighters. I would say that Alex Pereira definitely has a level above in terms of the competition he's faced than Jamahal Hill does. But they both have good wins in their own right. And it should be a spectacular fight. Okay, so who is going to win this fight? Well, I think that there's 2 big things. One thing to look at for each fighter. For Pereira, and it's both of their weaknesses, I would say. For Pereira, his weakness is that he does get hit with the right hand a lot. You had Izzy rock him at the end of round 1 with his right hand. You had Izzy knock him out basically at the end of round 2 of the rematch with his right hand. You had Yuri Prochazka crack him good with a overhand right. That's a weakness because Alex Pereira, his main defense is putting up his hands, pulling his head away, or leaning away from the punches. So, whatever angle they're coming at, he's going to be trying to lean away from the strikes. He stands in southpaw, so his right hand is in front, but he knocked out Jimmy Crute with a right hook. He basically knocked him out twice with 2 right hooks. He knocked out Johnny Walker with a right hook. He throws right hooks like they are his power hands. I watched a bit of Saif Sayoud's breakdown on the UFC's page of this fight, and he says that he thinks Jamahal Hill is a orthodox fighter fighting out of a southpaw stance, which makes a lot of sense. I don't know why he does that, but it makes sense because he does use his right hand a lot for his power punches. He likes to throw those right uppercuts too, right hooks, right overhands, all from the southpaw stance, which means his right leg is in front and his right hand is in front. So that's what Alex Pereira needs to watch out for. What does Jamahal Hill need to watch out for? What is the issue with Jamahal Hill? Well, the issue with Jamahal Hill is that he gets hit a lot, and it's hit by Alex Pereira's signature strikes, the left hook. So Glover Teixeira just landed a clean left hook on Jamahal Hill multiple times throughout their fight. Thiago Santos landed clean left hooks on Jamahal Hill. Those are kind of the only top-level opponents that Jamahal Hill has fought, and he hasn't really been hit too much since then, and I don't even think you should be looking too much past that to see kind of like... Yeah, he hasn't been hit too much past that, but those two opponents were able to land big punches on Jamahal Hill. Those punches hurt Jamahal Hill. He was all welted up from those strikes. He might not have been wobbled, but it caused physical damage that can be seen by the judges. So losing rounds, if not getting knocked out, it will also just make your visibility worse, and then everything else is going to go downhill from there. When he gets excited, when Jamahal Hill gets excited, he throws a lot of punches. He doesn't move his feet too much. He loses his stance. And what I mean by that is he goes from a southpaw stance to kind of a square stance on his opponents. And this is where I think the downside of that weird, I'm a right-handed fighter, but I fight in the southpaw stance comes in. Because he likes having his power hand in front, that necessarily means that he's going to have to square his body to his opponents. So instead of having his right leg forward, both of his legs are going to be equally level with each other. And so he's just going to be standing in front of his opponents, kind of like Dustin Poirier, just swinging punches. Uppercut, left hook, right hook, overhand right. Just doing that. He's good at doing that. He's great at throwing punches. What he's not great at is not getting hit when he's throwing punches. He gets hit. He's good at getting hit. When he gets hit, he can eat the punches. But then again, he's never fought someone as hard hitting as Pereira. He's good at getting hit. He's just not good at not getting hit. That's Jamahal Hill's downside. The other downside with Jamahal Hill is his legs. He does not check leg kicks at all. His legs are just there for the taking. Thiago Santos was able to just snatch a leg anytime he wanted. Same with Glover Teixeira. They were using legs for takedowns. Alex Pereira is going to be using legs for leg kicks. Jamahal Hill's legs are going to be gone by the first round. He is not going to be moving well outside of the first round. By the end of the first round, his legs are going to be gone. He does stand in a different position than Alex Pereira's opponents usually do. He stands in southpaw with his right leg forward. That means he's going to be opposite stances to Alex Pereira, who stands usually in an orthodox stance with his left leg forward. That's going to make it more difficult for Alex Pereira to kick his legs, but he's still going to do it. He still kicks when his opponents are standing in southpaw. Both Jiri Prochazka and Adesanya switch stances, and he's kicked them in both of their stances. Alex Pereira also will kick his opponents in their body, in their ribs, and in their head when they're in southpaw stances. That's something that Jamahal Hill's going to have to watch out for. So, essentially, Jamahal Hill is weak to counter strikes when he's going crazy up against the cage. How did Alex Pereira just finish his last opponent? With counter strikes. He literally knocked out his opponent when he was chasing him to the cage. Look at this. Overhand right. I can see Jamahal Hill doing this exact same thing. Overhand right. Pressure up against the cage. Another punch. He pulls his head away from it. Left hook. Or pulls his head away from it. Right hook. Left hook combination. Knocks him down. You can see that exact same thing happening with Jamahal Hill. Here's another example of what Alex Pereira did when he was pressured up against the cage. He started fighting back. And he clinched up. This is going to be a viable tool against Jamahal Hill. He can clinch with him. Another clip from the Jiri Prochazka fight where Jiri pressures Alex back. Alex, you can see he posts on his opponent. He does have that 1 inch longer in reach. I don't know how effective that's going to be, but he just moves away, posts on his opponent, and hand fights. And for the most part, has pretty good defense because of it. Let's also just take a look at some from the Izzy fight. If Jamahal Hill throws head kicks, because Alex is pretty good at blocking head kicks. Again, Jamahal Hill is in southpaw, so his front leg is forward, so he throws kicks with his back leg. So this would be the left kick that Hill is throwing. And we have Izzy in a southpaw stance. Alex tries to throw a leg kick. Another strike that could be really effective against Hill is teep kicks to the knee. And then Alex's body kicks on it against southpaw opponents. This is the one other thing that I wanted to talk about. So obviously Jamahal Hill can improve, but it's my job to analyze what footage we've seen so far and then predict how that footage is going to mesh with the footage from the other fighter that we've seen. One thing that Izzy does exceedingly well that Jamahal Hill doesn't do, he sets up his strikes. So Jamahal Hill can read strikes coming from his opponents and try to counter those strikes. But what he doesn't really do is set up his own strikes. He doesn't feint. He doesn't really throw too much in combinations. To the extent he does throw combinations, it's just when his opponents are pressed up against the cage and he's trying to land every single punch. One way that Izzy was able to land this is by setting it up. So he puts up this left hand to both distract and block the fact that he's going to throw this right hand following it up. And it worked well. Jamahal Hill really likes to throw big single shots, and then when he connects with those, he keeps throwing big single shots, and those are his combinations. But he really only throws multiple shots when he has you hurt. The problem with me picking Jamahal Hill, first of all, I don't know where Jamahal Hill got this aura of power about him. I've heard multiple fighters being interviewed at this UFC 300 press event saying that Jamahal Hill has crazy power. He does not have crazy power. He hit Glover Teixeira with like 150 strikes. He didn't really hurt him at all. He TKO'd Thiago Santos. He TKO'd Jimmy Crute. He knocked out Cole Johnny Walker, who hasn't done that by now. And yeah, he TKO'd Ovince St. Preux. He does not have crazy power. I would say that Yuri, Jan Blachowicz, and Adesanya are all more powerful than Jamahal Hill relative to each of their divisions. Jamahal Hill does not have crazy one-punch knockout power. I don't think that Jamahal Hill is going to be able to TKO Alex Pereira before Alex Pereira lands that finishing shot on Jamahal Hill. Ultimately, what this fight comes down to is the fact that Alex Pereira simply has more tools at his disposal and is able to use those tools better than Jamahal Hill does. The other thing is Jamahal Hill just has really bad defense. Jamahal Hill is just way too vulnerable to being counterstruck. We saw Alex Pereira just knock out a light heavyweight in the exact same way that I can super easily see Jamahal Hill being knocked out in. I just think that Jamahal Hill leaves too many defensive holes in his game when he's going on the attack for Alex Pereira to not be able to capitalize with a devastating blow that's going to sit him down and ultimately have him be finished by Alex Pereira. So in conclusion, while both guys have skills that they can use to take advantage of their opponent's weaknesses, Alex Pereira ultimately has more skills in mainly his body punching capabilities, his counter striking capabilities, essentially his left hook, and his leg kicking abilities, which are all weaknesses that Jamahal Hill has. And the only real thing that Jamahal Hill has at his disposal to take advantage of Alex's weaknesses is that big overhand right. That is a weakness that Alex has been working on. We've not seen any evidence that Jamahal Hill has been working on the weaknesses that I laid out there. He hasn't really been checking any leg kicks. He hasn't been doing better defensively on his body. He hasn't been doing better in pacing himself and not walking onto big counter strikes when he thinks he has his opponents hurt. So all of this together is making me lean towards Alex Pereira and I'm definitely picking him by knockout. And I think I'm going to pick a 3rd round knockout. I think he's going to take the first couple of rounds working on Jamal's body and legs, and obviously jabbing him up, threatening hooks every now and then when Jamahal Hill gets a little too aggro on him. And I think that in the 3rd round, he's either going to have Jamal hurt enough where he's going to be able to finish him, similar like he did to Adesanya, or Jamahal Hill is going to become desperate enough where he just forces the action and he's going to walk onto a devastating left hook knockout. So I am going to go with Alex Pereira by a round 3 left hook knockout. And I know that Alex Pereira is the betting favorite, but let me look up to see what odds he actually is. So Alex Pereira is a minus 130 favorite right now. I think that's actually kind of a crazy number. I think that Jamahal Hill is this close to Alex Pereira. I think that the line is this close based off of a lie, and that lie is Jamahal Hill's power. Go through his fights. He doesn't have the power that people are saying he does. It's like the Jeremy Stevens line all over again. This guy TKOs people. When I touch them, they go to sleep. Or I knock people out. This guy TKOs people. It's like, yeah, he TKOs people. Alex Pereira knocks them out. Alex Pereira got knocked out by Izzy a year ago when he was cutting way too much weight. He hasn't been chinny since. Jamahal Hill hasn't been chinny, but then again, he hasn't shown the devastating knockout ability that A, Alex Pereira has, and B, he would need to knock out Alex Pereira. And again, I think it's just kind of objective that he has at least lower punching power than Jan Blachowicz and Yuri Prochazka. Maybe you can argue he has higher punching power than Izzy, but compared to dehydrated Alex against Izzy, it's very debatable. Anyway, guys, that's it for my prediction. I'm probably going to be breaking down some footage and just dropping some footage videos for everyone to enjoy. But thanks for watching. Please let me know what you thought of my prediction. Let me know what parts you thought I got right, what parts you thought I missed, and what parts you thought I was just dead wrong about. Let me know your predictions in the comments down below. And everyone, please enjoy the fights. Please enjoy them. Enjoy every single one of them, because this has been a long time coming. This is the watering hole that we've all been trying to get to through the desert. All right. So have a great day, everyone.